Hello everyone, Ron Johnson here from L.T.L Tutoring Central. And this time around I'm talking about what to do for homework. A lot of students in this area, secondary school students and high school students, are entering a new semester, so I thought it would be a good time to review some homework tips. Even if you're in grade school or in college or university, it's always a good idea to review what to do for homework, so no matter when you're watching the video, it is applicable. One of the first things to remember is that you do have homework 4 or 5 nights a week. It's not just when the teacher or the professor says do this specific set of questions or read these specific chapters. You have lots to do in your homework, so you should schedule it at least 4 or 5 days a week. You, of course, want to complete all the assignments given by the teacher. That seems fairly obvious, but sometimes students say, well, it really wasn't worth that much, or I didn't really think it was going to count toward the mark. But the point is that it's still a part of your education. So the more you do, even if it isn't being graded or even if it is a small percentage, first of all, you want to get every single percent you can. And secondly, you're learning while you're practicing. So even if it doesn't count for any part of your grade, you're going to have that information available to you for tests, quizzes, and the final exam because you've rehearsed it more. So it's still incredibly valuable and probably will affect your overall mark even if that particular assignment isn't going to be graded. You also can start rough drafts, do your research. Remember that when you have major projects or assignments coming up, you shouldn't just record when it's due. It's not just the due date that's important. You need to do all of the legwork that gets you there. So you want to plan that out, and that is a part of your homework as well. So that adds extra days to your homework. It's not just an essay is due on April 22nd. That day is not the only day that you should be working on the essay. You need to be doing the research, the rough drafts, the proofreading, the editing. So there's lots of other days that you should be working on that. Every day, review your notes. First of all, take notes. A lot of people don't anymore, but take notes in your classes. They can be very helpful. You don't need to note every single thing the teacher says or everything that's on the board or computer or whatever, but do note the highlights because it can be very helpful, particularly if you're writing them out longhand. Seems to connect with our brains a lot better. We seem to retain the information longer. Take notes, then review them each night. There's not going to be a lot of notes usually in one day, so it doesn't take you a long time to just review those notes again. And that way you will be constantly accessing the information. You can also preview what's coming the next day. Now, sometimes teachers say, tomorrow we're going to be reading chapter 3, or tomorrow we're going to be talking about volcanoes or whatever. So do a little preview. If you have the text and you know what chapter is coming up or what section, you could look at that. If you don't, but you know you're going to be talking about volcanoes tomorrow, look it up online, get a little bit of information about it, watch a video or two, read a little bit of interesting text on it, or if you're doing algebra, you could, multiplying integers, for example, you could look that up, see a few questions being done. That way you're going into the classroom warm. In other words, you know a little bit about the topic already, so when the teacher or professor begins to speak, you're not completely cold on the topic. You have a little bit of insight, and that will help you to understand what they're saying a lot quicker and a lot better than you would if you had just come in without any knowledge whatever. Give yourself some practice questions. This can work for any course that you're having. Give yourself some questions, try to answer them, check to see if your answers are correct. Obviously, if they aren't, you want to make them correct to find out what went wrong. But you can do that for any course. Often they have questions at the end of a chapter or sometimes at the end of the book. They have chapter questions. And so you can set yourself up that way. Or you can make questions from the headings and subheadings and then practice answering those questions. Just as you would for the SQ3R reading method that we talked about before. So there are lots of ways in which you can self-test or quiz yourself to see how much of this information do I really fully understand. And it's a good idea to try writing out the answers too, not just thinking about them, because we often kind of cheat in our own brains. We think, oh yeah, I remember that. I've seen students look at the answers and say, oh yeah, yeah, I knew that. Well, then why didn't you put that down? You know, if you really knew it, then it would be there. So try that. If you're taking a math class or even a science or physics class, something like that, where it's fairly heavy on the math side, you want to practice the question all the way through, show the steps and see if you got the right answer. If you didn't, you can work backwards to see, okay, where did I go wrong? Which step did I do incorrectly? That's the point of showing steps. A lot of students hate showing steps. That's one of the reasons why you show them and sometimes why you're graded on them because they can be very helpful in finding out where you're making your mistakes if you are making mistakes. Uh, if you don't know the multiplication tables, try to memorize them. I know nowadays everyone uses calculators pretty much from kindergarten on, I think, but it's still a good idea to have some mental math skills. It will get you a step ahead. Use your calculator when you need to, particularly on tests and exams, because you don't want to make a mistake, but try to get some mental math skills as well. Review the week's notes at the end of the week. So every day or every night you're reviewing your daily notes. Then at the end you review the whole week's notes. Now, in this kind of rotating review, you've seen the material several times already. Normally, a lot of students take a note, it goes away, they don't see it again unless there's a test or an exam, and then they look at it again. So you haven't really rehearsed it. You haven't really seen it often enough for you to remember it or for you to fully understand it. So reviewing your notes every night, reviewing the whole week's notes for the week, then practicing and rehearsing questions, etc. You've seen the material 3, 4, 5 times before any quiz, test, or final exam comes up. And then, of course, you can prepare for those too. So that's another time. So you can see the advantage of this method. None of it takes an enormous amount of time. It will save you a lot of time before an exam because you will be basically prepared. You will only need to review the most difficult sections or questions you've had a lot of trouble on. Everything else, you should really know it by the time the exams come up. It's a failure of either the teaching method, the course, or your own practices. And I hate to say it, but it's often our own practices that let us fall down, not fail necessarily, but weaken our scores. So make sure that you're doing this. You will be so much more prepared that you will only need quick review on most of the material and a little heavier on the tough spots. So the exams should not be taking up a whole week of 24/7 studying. That means you didn't do the semester correctly. Try to schedule your homework as well. It's good to have specific days and times. It doesn't always have to be the same time. You might do a different time Monday than Wednesday, but every Wednesday you do it at this time. Every Monday you do it at this time, whenever possible, because that helps you be mentally and sort of psychically prepared to sit down and focus on your homework and nothing else. I won't go into all the details of shutting off cell phones, etc. I've talked about that before. But you'll be engaged fully with your homework because you know each day of your homework days, that's what you are scheduled to do. And don't forget to review some of the older material once in a while too. Just go back a few weeks or a month just to have a quick look. Because again, particularly with final exams, you don't want some of that material that you took notes on, 2 or 3 months or more ago to not be in your memory. So you want to look back and try to remind yourself of that information. Okay, just a few tips and hints or reminders, I guess, on what to do for your homework. Remember, it doesn't take that long. It will save you time in the end. The time spent will vary in grade school, probably depends on what grade you're in, but half an hour to an hour would probably be good per day. High school, usually an hour to 2 hours. There may be times when you need more with major projects and whatnot, but it's not an enormous amount when you think about it. When you're at school for about 6 hours, 6, 7 hours, that only makes an 8-hour day. And you're not working the whole time when you're at school either. So there's lots of time. And you can do some of your homework during school if you happen to have extra time. I know every schedule is a little bit different, so that varies. All right, it's Ron Johnson from L.T.L Tutoring Central. Keep learning, keep having fun, and don't forget to do your homework. It's all for you. It's your education. Get as much of it as you can. Bye bye for now.